My name is Eric Shabazz, and you're listening to the Invisible Hand Podcast. The world's ran by human nature, self-interest, and power. Let's get into it. Today we're going to be talking about, should young men date single mothers? And we're going to be breaking down from the perspective of Robert Greene's 48 Laws of Power. It's also from Robert Greene's perspective of laws of human nature. And then we're going to be looking at it from the perspective of self-interest. Is it in a man or a young man's best interest to date a single mother? And we're going to really go through the fundamental biological drivers behind why it's probably not a good idea. So we're going to go through that entire framework today. So let's get into it. So first of all, one of the first things in the 48 Laws of Power that Robert Greene's talk about is, if you want to maintain your power in the world, when you're navigating the world, you want to basically make sure that you don't infect yourself with the misery and misfortune of others. Robert Greene talks about how you should stay away from people whose toxic attitude brought their downfall or unhappiness. Such feelings are infectious, he says. Associate yourself with happy, positive, and successful people. So essentially, what Robert Greene's talking about in the 48 Laws of Power is that people who are powerful and successful, they navigate the world with intention. So if they know people who are struggling, who are making bad decisions, or who are dealing with misfortune, actually, even though it sounds great to help that person out, as a person who wants to maximize their power in the world, you actually want to avoid them. Now, what does that have to do with single mothers? Well, let's be honest. If you're dealing with a young single mother who's probably like 19 to 24, she still looks good, she's still attractive, and you still want to date her, right? However, in those short amount of years that she's been an adult, she had a kid with a man, and already she's a single mother at that young age from 18 to 24, which either means that she's picking bad men or she's young and irresponsible. She's having sex with the bad guy, with the bad boy who does what he wants, who doesn't really want a relationship. She's chasing behind him. She's addicted to the drama. And the reality is, if she's that young, between the ages of 18 to 24, and already messed up her first relationship with her baby daddy that early, that shows some sign of trauma, toxicity, and bad behavior or bad decision making. So as a successful man who want to navigate the world and basically continue to succeed in life, why would you associate yourself or choose willingly to hook up with a single mother when it's not necessarily in your best interest? Because a lot of times what happens is, when you're dealing with single mothers, she's usually dealing with a baby daddy who turns out to be a menace. A lot of these guys that impregnate these girls and then don't stay with them, especially when they're young, between the ages of 18 to 24, are guys who are probably not necessarily doing the best thing in life. They're chasing girls, they're having sex frivolously, they're playing with these girls' emotions. And so a lot of these girls are irresponsible for messing with these type of guys and not knowing what's going to result from that. And so basically they make these bad decisions. They probably have bad habits themselves. And all of a sudden, as a good guy who's doing what you're supposed to do, you're looking at her saying she's very fine. And what's happening is, a lot of times these girls didn't necessarily want to date you in the first place, and now you become an option, and now you're basically bringing that drama over to your life. And so Robert Greene says, if you're somebody who wants to navigate the world and gain more power in the world, you need to avoid these type of people at all costs. And a lot of times that means avoiding single mothers. So another concept he talks about, and he talks about it in the laws of human nature, Robert Greene says, the law of short-sightedness. We overemphasize what we see and hear in the present and lose sight of the bigger picture. Any action can trigger a chain reaction with far-reaching consequences. Learn to see the big picture. Now, this is super important when you're considering dating a single mother. As I said before, a lot of young men, especially the guys who do what they're supposed to do, went to school, got good grades, got a job, etc. A lot of times what happens is, later in life, after these girls mess up, they see these guys and they start to want to consider them to date them. But these same girls were the girls that wouldn't take you serious before. So Robert Greene talks about the law of short-sightedness. He said it is not a natural inclination for human beings to think and live in the long term. It's more natural for us to think short term. So what happens is, you see this girl who's probably still attractive, she has a kid, however, now she's giving you play, and that lust, you're getting blinded by lust, you're getting blinded by ego, And that's short-sighted, because what you need to know is if you hook up this girl with kids and now you feel good about yourself because you get this attractive girl you thought you couldn't get, you think that the hard work that you did vindicated you, and now you can get this girl, but she has a kid. So you compromise because you're blinded by lust, you're blinded by your ego saying, I deserve this girl who wouldn't give me a chance last time, right? But eventually that lust is gonna wear off. And when you go through hard times and you're used to being with the girl and you already had sex with her a whole bunch, she's just a normal girl like anybody else. And what's going to happen is when things get hard, you're going to want to leave, and you probably are. A lot of single girls, especially when they're young, are constantly with guys, and those guys never stay. Why? Because it's not necessarily in a man's best interest to take care of another kid. And if that kid is not genetically yours, when things get hard and things get tough, you're going to just leave. There's nothing bonding you to that woman long term like that kid being genetically yours. And so if you think about it like that, in the law of short-sightedness, you need to understand that when you're dealing with a single mother, you need to think long term and say, what is the long term implications of this? What's some of the things that can happen when I'm taking care of another man's child? She can go back to the man before, after all that investment. She could break up with you, and there's nothing you could do about it, and you won't be able to see the kid. So don't be short-sighted in important things like this. Always go against your natural human nature to be short-sighted and think long-term. So that's something very important that you need to actually think about when you think about dealing with a single parent mother. Lastly, Rob, this is another concept called self-interest. Is it in your self-interest to date a single mother? Who benefits more? So let's just walk through this real quick. You're dating a woman with a kid, she's attractive. So you do benefit from, you get a woman that you're attracted to. A lot of times you might be getting a woman who you normally couldn't get before because she wouldn't give you a chance, but now you're successful and she already played with Chad and Tyrone and realized they're no good. She gives you a chance. So it is an ego boost for you. So that's a self-interest, right? She's dating you. You feel good that you got an attractive girl. However, there is a downside. She has a kid. Now let's look at who gets the better deal. Well, you get this woman that, maybe you're attracted to, and that's good. However, you got to take on this kid that's not genetically yours. And there's a lot of downsides to that. So first, let's talk about one of Robert Greene's laws of power. He talks about when you date single mothers that you may not consider. First of all, he talks about how you should protect your reputation at all costs. Your reputation affects people's expectation. You can elevate yourself by associating with the right people. You can also destroy your enemies by hurting their reputation. So essentially here in the 48 Laws of Power, Robert Greene's talking about how invaluable your reputation is as far as being a high value man and navigating the world. Well, let's be honest. When you date a single mom, you're not perceived as an alpha male. Being a stepfather is not perceived as alpha generally. That doesn't mean that if you're a man out there and you got a stepson that you're a beta male. It just means, as a general sense, that's not something that men aspire to. Just like if you think about where the term alpha male came from, it came from a biologist or a zoologist was studying basically gorillas, and they noticed that the gorilla that was the alpha, the dominant, got all the women. He also protected the tribe, but he got all the women. That's an alpha male. An alpha male doesn't take scraps. He doesn't basically take on kids of other gorillas, right? So let's be honest. How you're perceived by others is affected when you're a single, when you're a stepfather. Other men don't generally say, oh, he's a stepfather, he's such a dominant male. They don't say, oh, he's a stepfather, he's such a great man. They think in the back of their head, oh, he's a stepfather, I wonder what's that about. So from the perspective of how you're perceived, how you're able to be perceived in the world, it's not the best look to be a stepfather because you're not perceived as an alpha. But the most important part about why it's not in your best interest to date a single mother is really you have no legal rights to the child. You have all the responsibility and no authority. Let me break that down. What that means is when you date a single mom and you stay with her at a significant amount of time, the state and the government at that point consider you cohabitating. And so in many ways, you start to be responsible for that child as if you're their biological dad when it comes to finances. If you stay with that woman long enough, she can even possibly hit you with child support. right? You're investing your time, your money, and you start to grow and have a connection with that child. But let's say for any reason the woman breaks up with you, things start to not work out, she goes back to her baby dad, and you already invested 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 years with the child, and she decides to leave because she's mad. You have no legal rights to that child. You cannot compel the court for her to let you see that child because you're not the biological father. So at any point in your long relationship, your relationship can blow up. The woman can be mad at you, and she can just take the child from you. You have no legal right to her, and that is the biggest risk why it's not in your self-interest to engage in a long-term relationship with a woman who already has a child. It's just too much risk. Not to mention, you don't have the right necessarily to discipline the child. And a lot of times the mom don't necessarily want you whooping the child or harshly disciplining the child if you're not the biological father. And if you do it, the biological father can have a problem with it. And so you got all this responsibility to take care of the child, protect the child, teach the child, make sure the child is happy, but you don't get any of the authority that a father who's the genetic father of the child would have. So if you really take those biggest things into consideration, especially if you're a young man and you're still between the ages of 18 and 24, you're still developing yourself and trying to navigate the world, for these fundamental reasons, if you really have to weigh it all, it's not in your best interest to date a single mother. This has been the Invisible Hand Podcast. Till next time, my friends. Hey guys, we're going to do a quick word from our sponsors. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll be right back. The future of legal betting is finally here. Place a bet using Bitcoin right over the phone. Unlike traditional gambling sites, every bet you make with us is guaranteed a 50% probability of winning. All of our bets are one-on-one against a real person and never the house. We offer some of the most unique bets in the industry. Bets like, will LeBron James win his 5th NBA title? Will Joe Biden be elected for a second term? Will Tesla be worth $1 trillion by the end of 2022? You can bet on if it'll rain tomorrow. You can literally bet on any future event. Text the phrase I bet to the number in the description, and I'll reply back with all of our available bets. Again, text the phrase I bet to the number in the description, and I'll reply back with all of our available bets today.